Hello and welcome to this edition of EMS Now Up Close. Today I have two guests, as you can see. John McKay, who's a president of sales with Freedom USA, and John Magee, who's a vice president of sales with Freedom USA. And this makes interviewing very easy because I just have to say, "What do you think, John?" and I'll get a response.
For sure.
Freedom, of course, is a global electronics components distributor, been around since, I believe, 1999. I've spoken to both of these gentlemen before, and they always have good insight into the market. So gentlemen, thank you for coming on again and agreeing to do this.
Yeah, good to see you again, Eric. Always nice to see you.
Good. Well, let's start kind of big picture. Kind of what's your view of kind of the current component supply chain? We've come out of some difficult times over the last few years. So how do you view it these days?
Well, I think the problem is there's too much of it. Everybody was buying for 2 years during allocation, and generally the cycles of allocation don't last that long. It's usually around a 9-month to a 12-month allocation. This one lasted over 2 years. So not only did it last 2 years, but the OCMs were a lot more keen this year, this time not to get caught with people double and tripling ordering. So they required hefty NCNRs and in some cases deposits on the product. So when it finally hit, they bought product in the open market, and in some cases up to a year or two out to protect assurance of supply chain. And then all of a sudden the franchise distributors started getting delivery, and they didn't ask whether you wanted it. They started shipping it to you because they had NCNRs and they enforced it. I think now you've got a lot of people trying to bleed off that inventory, and it's going to take longer than 6 months to a year to bleed off. So right now we're trying to find opportunities that weren't really necessarily the hard to find obsolete or long lead time parts. We're seeing a lot of shifts in IP&E where the lead times weren't 52 weeks to a year on the commodities, and now we're getting more opportunities in that. But I think that most customers are saying, hey, we're still building, but we just have way too much product right now. And it's creating a lot of issues because every single customer we talk to says, hey, I've got a ton of excess I want to sell to you, but it's at allocated prices. So it's really not working for anybody. And we're also seeing customers are struggling for cash flow because of that. And we're trying to accommodate them to make sure that we have a win-win relationship for both sides, but it's challenging.
Mm-hmm. John, what would you add to that?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I agree with a lot of that, Eric. One of the big things I see is that I think a lot of people, even not that they would admit to it, but they're confused about the state of the market, right? A lot of data in the market is not very good, and I think there's conflicting things going on, right? So if you're a chip maker, you during that time, the last couple of years, right, you got this great visibility to your customers' demand and forecast, and you really don't want to lose that, right? So how do you keep that up? Well, you post standard lead times that are fairly long, 35, 40, 50 weeks still. And customers are being surprised because they're buying it on that lead time and parts are showing up in 15 weeks, right? And it exacerbates some of the cash flow problems. And it's really, I think the large distributors in our business, they can't with confidence tell the customer if it's 40 or 15 weeks either. So it's really putting a lot of customers in a tough spot where, they're doing what they have to do to try to protect themselves. But at the same point, they're putting other parts of their business at risk. Like I said, some cash flow, inventory terms might hurt their stock price if they're a public company, those kind of things. And it's a very tricky time right now, I think, where a lot of the constituents that we care about, they're trying to figure out who can I work with to really try to give me as much flexibility as possible, who can do some things maybe out of the ordinary to try to support us. And, that can mean a lot of different things, frankly, but, it's something where we think we fit in very, very well.
Okay. Everybody talks about kind of the bullwhip effect too that's occurred, right? Where do you see us in that kind of process?
Yeah, I refer to it as the pendulum, as much as the bullwhip. And it has definitely swung, back. And what's going to happen, I believe, is that it's going to overcorrect, and there's going to be some trouble on the other end of the pendulum swing. So, right now, if some of our big customers in the marketplace, and I'm not just saying Freedom, ours is the industry, if they get an uptick in business and they start, manufacturing at even a higher rate than they are right now, all of a sudden lead time is going to become an issue, very quickly. I have a friend who's been in the industry also for a long time, more, franchise distribution, and he kind of had this feel that like it feels like there's just a couple steps away from bigger problems, right? So, and some companies will be able to manage their way through that because they have good finances and large checkbooks and all this kind of stuff. And a certain size customer, maybe mid-size and down, right? They really have to be careful that they don't put themselves in a bad situation and overextend themselves and all those kind of things. So, so I think the pendulum is, currently in a tough spot, right? Where customers aren't buying as much as they had been because of inventory stockpiles, but they're not going to be sure when to restart buying. And in some cases, they're going to do it and get a little stuck, I think.
Yeah, and to add to that too, I think one of the bigger problems is going to be when it does shift and there is more demand, there's no product, right? So we spent like 18 years in the desert where people built up inventory, and there was a ton of inventory sitting in franchise. Well, they're not sitting on that inventory anymore. And the available inventory that's out there is, the prices haven't dropped that much. I mean, not like it did back in 2000 after allocation. All of a sudden, people were giving away product. Prices are still holding pretty firm.
Yeah. You make me think too. I mean, with that demand signal going up the chain, right? Or the manufacturers, the risk is that they're going to slow down on their production, right? Because they're not getting these strong demand signals. And then when it ramps up again, there could be problems filling the pipeline again.
Yeah, and the reality of it, Eric, all the investment that we're hearing about isn't for the quote unquote everyday components that are going in most of our everyday industrial commercialist type of products, right? These are investments in super small geometries, for the ultra high-end electronics. Well, there's a ton of industries out there. One, medical, high rel, where they don't want to change and they need a certain, part type. Automotive, that's why they got caught up in this, is that automotive is technically using old tech in a lot of cases to drive the vehicles, right? So that's not where the investments are going for new fabs and all that kind of stuff. So as demand grows, it's probably going to be exacerbated where we may never get to the point where we really see lead times back to 4 to 6 weeks like they were in 2019, because capacity just won't want to keep up with demand, and lead time, lengthy lead times will be the norm, and it's how do you manage through that?
Yeah. So listen, one of the things I wanted to kind of probe with you on too, it seems like many things have changed in the supply chain, right, over the last few years, especially kind of giving rise to some competing needs. Kind of what changes are you seeing?
Well, I think, since, post-pandemic, most customers are looking for a hybrid approach on how to, go to our market. Because, for a long time, they really had flexibility because they could go to franchise distributor and it was, 6 or 12 weeks and they didn't have to worry about it. And then all of a sudden, when they got stuck and they couldn't really get a firm commit date from franchise, they came to our channel. And then, all of a sudden, it lasted a lot longer. And instead of buying, 90 days out, customers started buying 6 months and a year out. So even if you're an OEM or a contract manufacturer, you kind of have to have a plan B. And, anybody says, oh, I only buy from franchise. I was talking to one of our, customers recently. I said, well, the channel's about $640 billion and independent distribution's 15% of that. That's $24 billion. That's a lot of opportunity. So we're trying to, and that's what we're kind of, we've kind of coined the phrase, maybe franchise isn't for everyone. And if you're one of the big guys, sure, you're going to get that, the TLC. But if you're under $1 billion, we might be a better solution, or this channel might be a better solution for your customers. So I think that a lot of people, they got stuck and they want to have options going forward.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Eric, I would say not to be too cynical, right? I cut my teeth in the industry at one of the large franchise guys too, but there's this general philosophy like those companies are the white knights in the industry, right? That they protect the customers from bad product and all these supply chain potential issues. And I think what was proved out over 21 and 22 and part of 23 is that they really couldn't do what their advertising said they could do. And a lot of companies came to our space because they couldn't wait 50 weeks for lead time, right? They needed product in 5 weeks, 3 weeks, 6 weeks, and needed to be able to secure that. And I think it really opened the eyes for a lot of companies that, and these are customers, right? That there are other options out there, and there's companies like us, been in business for a long time, 25 years we're celebrating this year, and we're putting resources in place that try to just be a good vendor and a good partner for them. And some of it is very, very simple services, taking a scheduled order or something like that, and having some flexibility. And some of it's very complex in terms of, managing a lot of part numbers, shipping to multiple locations, and, holding inventory for very extended periods of time, and things that our model and our business, as Freedom has allowed us to offer. And it's very customizable, and it's very much, we can adjust right on the fly, on a conversation like this with a customer. If they say, hey, this would be really important to me, we can very quickly determine if we can do that effectively and efficiently for them. And I think that's been a great change for us. And, some of the large companies, like, again, of course, everybody's going to deal with them in some way, but it doesn't mean everybody likes dealing with them. And I think that that became even more prevalent for us over the last couple of years, because they really made it kind of painful. They were the original supplier on a lot of transactions that we did, in 21 and 22, and they didn't have any help for the customer, unfortunately.
Yeah. Hey, I wanted to follow up too. I mean, use the term franchise, but just to be clear, I mean, there's different levels of franchise too, right? And some independent distributors do have franchise relationships, and I believe you folks do as well, right?
We do, and when we're referring to that, we are taking a shot a little bit at the biggest of the big companies, the top, say, 10 in the industry. Yep. They're not trying to even really service every customer out there. They're giving very minimal support, maybe a website to, a certain segment of the customer base. They need the volume, right? So they're going to point their resources at the very largest companies in the world, and that's who they want to do business with. They need that volume to, sustain their model. But that's, it's worse than the 80-20 rule, right? That's the 95-5 rule, right? 95% of the customers, fall somewhere below that scope, and they still need to figure out where to buy their own semi and their Molex and their, NXP, and, how do I get a little bit of financing help? How do I get a little bit of inventory support? How do I, work with somebody who's can do some very flexible things on the fly too, when I worked for one of those large companies, we might be working on a program for 3 or 4 months, and at the last minute, Vice President number 72 says, no, we're not going to do that deal, right? And all of a sudden, the customer's been waiting and they're expecting it to come to fruition, and they say, no, we can't do that, right? So I think at Freedom, we have to say no. It's going to be a quick no, so we don't hold you up. But more times than not, we can find a pretty happy medium that can service the need, and it's a win-win really for both sides. Which let's not kid ourselves. If we can't get more win-wins, then everybody needs to stay in business, right? Both the customer side and our side.
Absolutely. So tell me, what are these changes? What initiatives is that driving at Freedom?
I mean, we'll just talk about it.
Yeah. So, one of the things that we're really leaning into is we recognize that we just need to continue to scale what we already do better. So we think we have a lot of good services to offer customers. Our messaging, I think is getting out there pretty good. We've really doubled down on some new marketing efforts to, continue to enhance the Freedom brand. And, so we are scaling, we've added additional facilities, additional warehousing. We're staffing up, where many companies in our industry, regardless if you're franchised, independent, or anywhere in the middle, most people are laying off and trimming their base. We've grown our staff by 35% in the last 12 months, and we're still on that path. We believe that, we need to service our customer base better, which means we need that bandwidth amongst our team. And, we're bringing them in every couple of months, and we're doing some training, and, we're taking people that don't always have industry experience, but maybe they have a little sales experience, and, they're looking for a career change. And, has been positive for us all the way around. So we find ourselves connecting every week with companies that we maybe didn't have the bandwidth to work with previously, and now we're doing a better job of that. So we're going to continue to scale. That could mean resources in other regions as well. Right now, we're scaling predominantly our sales force here in the Americas, but we're also conscious about not going too fast, because if we can't deliver on our promise of great customer service, then why do it, right? Because all you're doing is 2 steps forward, 1 step back.
Right. So as I hear you speaking, what comes out in it, and I've seen it in some of your marketing recently, is the whole quality customer service, right? Really differentiating on that, and that's resonated in some of your comments here about how you're engaging, how you choose to engage with customers, the training that you're doing. Is that really the key differentiator?
I think so, and I'd like John to chime in here too, but we're all consumers in our everyday lives, and we bemoan how bad customer service has become in so many things that we touch every day in our personal lives. And we don't want to be that for our customers, right? So we're trying not to have it just be a tagline, right? We really are trying to lead with customer service. And the big distributors that we kind of, again, taking some pokes at, that's where a lot of the business is, and we think we can out customer service them, and it's really about, can we just get customers to give us a try? And we're doing more and more of that every week. Again, we feel very confident. It feels good. We walk into the building, we have a good vibe, and we see our customer base growing, and we're trying to do it more than just one at a time, right? But we're actively trying to really acquire customers and then maintain them for a very long period of time.
Yeah, I mean, it's very challenging for the big distributors too, because they're trying to grab their market share back. They don't have inventory on the shelf. They're trying to understand forecast, what's going on with lead time, and they're having reduction in overhead as well. The big the future. I mean, I haven't run into future in 2 years. They don't have inventory. They've kind of been in limbo, and now they're a public company, so they're going to be a different type of distributor. That's going to disrupt the whole flow of everything, because they were a big player in the industry. Some of the big guys don't like some of our advertising because they were a little offended with our message. And for me, as I said to one of the lawyers, I'm like, I'm happy it made it to your desk. So it looks like it made it out there. But we're not trying to pick a fight with anybody. We realize they're the 800-pound gorillas, and they're good distributors as well. We feel like we're a different niche, and the only way you're going to know is if it's an opportunity, and you can decide for yourself.
Yeah, and I just last thought, Derek, is that a lot of this, it's not us just being cheeky, right? We're talking to customers, John and I specifically, every day. We're traveling and visiting customers, and we're hearing, hey, here's what's going on in our supply chain. Here's who's taking care of us. Here's creating challenges for us, and can you help with some of these things, right? So a lot of those things we don't even have to ask that difficult a question to really get some feedback, which then we can use to turn around and service them.
Yeah. So as you, John McKay, actually had said earlier, was that when you were talking about this year, right? Everything got stomped. It'll be a few slow quarters. So looking forward, what happens next?
I think it's gonna, kind of like when the allocation ends. I think it's all of a sudden people are gonna be like, holy cow, I'm busy. And everybody's gonna be looking for product. And that's really, so for the past 9 months, that's been my initiative with John. I'm like trying to find new channels of supply, because I think that some regions that we're buying predominantly from have kind of exhausted their resources, not as lucrative as they were, 5 years ago. So we have to make sure we're staying ahead of the curve. And also, a lot of our customers want different commodities that they never asked us for. Previously, we were always, memory, IC, semiconductor, ASICs, and so forth, programmable. So now we find customers like, hey, I need this. I'm not being supported in this commodity. Can you help us? So once we find a good channel for that type of product, now we try to find other customers so that we can kind of, scale what we're doing better. I think that, look, the demand's still strong. I think that the industry is going to do well. It's an adjustment right now. And, I talked to a big CM the other day, and he's like, hey, we're carrying, 600 days worth of inventory. Now we're down to 120. So it's moving in the right direction. But, you know, as Magee mentioned earlier, the shift right now in demand is a lot of AI and, you know, the high tech industry, but it still comes down to, you know, capacity. And, you know, they're building new fabs and everything, but we're years out from being able to realize any of that relief. So I think you know, everybody's saying 2025. I think that is going to be end of this year to begin of 2025. I think it's pretty solid that we're going to start seeing a drastic improvement.
Yeah.
I think also, Eric, for us, that there's a certain customer, I wouldn't even say just size, but, you know, a certain type of customer who maybe didn't have all the resources to buy a year's worth of inventory, and they are engaging, you know, as we have staffed up and started getting more touch points in, we're bringing in opportunities because they are buying in a more standard pattern than maybe some of the larger companies who over inventoried on their top, you know, 15% of their parts that, you know, went into their core products. So we find that there's a really fertile market there for us to really just do block it and tackle it and try to do a good job. And, you know, what I refer to as old-fashioned distribution work, right? A little hold some inventory and, you know, help them manage when they need to take it to their facility.
Yeah. What about the whole issue of obsolescence management? I know it's always an issue in the industry. I think you guys certainly have a service to help with that too. How is that getting more critical? Is that becoming, how do you view that?
Yeah, it's definitely it's this track record happens all the time, right? You come off of an allocation and suppliers, chip makers, if you will, continue to look at their portfolios. And we have some announcements that came out just recently in the last couple of months where some end of life, you know, stuff has come out and customers are having to make decisions. All right, am I going to redesign? Am I going to buy enough inventory to manage through my design cycle? So I think there's definitely more of that activity that is starting to happen and will continue to happen over the next year. And those present problems on all sides, right? We don't have unlimited resources either. You know, we can't hold 2 years worth of inventory for every customer who asks. But, you know, we're strategically looking at that and trying to, you know, find ways to be creative for the customer to, you know, kind of split the bill maybe with them a little bit to try to, you know, get some revenue, but also hold some inventory. And it's a lot of them are recognizing that they have a problem, you know, coming down the pike because of the obsolescence.
Yeah. And of course, obsolescence is a relative term too, right? Everything, every year, you know, it changes and grows, I guess. Were you going to say something, John McKay?
I was just smiling because we just did a 2-year schedule.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. It's not that it's just hard to do that for everybody, like you said, but we have scenarios where we can do much more than a lot of the public companies that we compete with, right? In terms of holding inventory, because typically their profiles, they want to hold like 30 or 60 days worth of inventory in support of a customer. We start at like 90 days where we're willing to do some inventory support, and we can go out from there with the right discussion and, you know, build a negotiation.
Okay. So listen, as for people in the audience who are watching this and hearing you gentlemen speak and they say, hey, I'd like to talk to these guys, what's the best way to reach out to connect with Freedom?
Go ahead. You got your cell phone number?
I can say, you want to take my cell phone number and smoke, you know, however possible. That's one of the things, you know, I've been in sales for a long time, and it can't be a commercial. You have to back it up. And I do believe customer service is our separation. And, you know, I work through lunch every single day, and we were doing some remodeling and expanding, and all of a sudden I noticed the phone was ringing during lunch and nobody was answering the phone. And I'm like, wait a second, you know, what about West Coast? What about Midwest? So, you know, we're always trying to make sure that we're accessible. John and I get on team and Zoom calls, you know, daily basis. And we tell the customers, here's my email, here's my cell phone. We're really accessible from the top down everywhere in this company. And it's not a commercial. We believe in customer service. And I'm on a plane from now on through, you know, electronica. So,
wow.
You know, and we really do try to make sure we're accessible. I mean, we're revamping our website. We're redoing everything. You know, we've added, you know, more resources in sales. And, you know, the surprising part about the new people in sales it's a tough time to start selling, you know, especially if you don't have experience. But we noticed surprisingly that they were having a lot of success because they weren't used to having the phone ring nonstop and emails coming through, that they couldn't handle. And they're actually proactively going out, calling customers and emailing, and they're developing new relationships. So we feel really strong about our business model. And if anybody can't get a hold of us, yeah, send me an email.
Yeah, for sure. And I was gonna get a little more specific. We're probably launching our new website by the 1st of May. So revision of that. So it's got all the general context stuff on there for all of us, and you can meet the staff, as well as you've probably seen some of our videos on socials where we're some interview style stuff with our sales managers and some other key contributors in the business. And we want to continue to show our personality a little bit out there in the marketplace, because John and I both believe we can have fun doing this too. I mean, work's not just work. We enjoy it, and we want the team to enjoy it. And, it's fun building new relationships with customers. So we're really trying to lean into that, every day, frankly.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Excellent. Excellent. It reminds me of the old adage, all things being equal, you want to do business with people you like and get along with, right? I mean, it does matter. So kudos to you.
They like and they trust.
Yeah, exactly. Well, John and John, thank you for your time. Thank you for this. It's always great. Your perspective on the industry is always insightful. So I always enjoy getting to talk to you guys, individually and collectively. We've done it both ways here. So I wish you continued success this year, and definitely let's get caught up again this year and get some more updates from you.
Sounds good. Thank you so much.
Have a great one.
You too. Thanks.